Go ahead. Look at the dog lying at your feet. Maybe they're curled up on the couch or waiting by the door, tail wagging for a walk. In that furry, familiar face, we see a friend, a family member. We see a loyalty that feels uniquely human. But what if I told you that the creature you share your home with is a living relic of a world of ice and desperation? What if them nudging your hand for a scratch is the echo of an ancient pact? A deal made not out of love, but out of hunger and fear. The story of your dog doesn't start at a breeder or a shelter. It starts thousands of years ago, in a world trapped in the grip of the last great ice age. It's a story of two species, both smart pack hunters, pushed to the edge of extinction. They should have been enemies, but instead, they forged an alliance that would not only help them both survive, but would change the course of human history and create the animal we've come to love. This is the story of how the Ice Age, in all its brutal power, accidentally created your best friend. Roughly 23,000 years ago, the world was trapped in ice. In Siberia, colossal glaciers miles high ground their way across the continent, cutting off a small band of humans and a pack of ancient wolves. For both, this frozen prison should have been a death sentence. The endless cold and the scarcity of food created a crucible of survival. But in this shared isolation, the harsh environment forced an unprecedented choice: compete and die, or form an alliance that would accidentally spark the evolution of man's best friend. This isn't just a story about taming a wild beast. It's an epic of coevolution, a biological treaty written in the snow. And the consequences are sleeping on your living room floor right now. To really understand where dogs came from, we need to go back to the world where this partnership was born. Forget the temperate climates we know today. The world during the last glacial maximum was a far harsher place. This was the coldest, driest phase of the Ice Age, when huge continental ice sheets locked up much of the Earth's water. Imagine Siberia not as a vast forest, but as a windswept, frigid expanse. This was the Mammoth Steppe. Now, don't picture a polar desert. Though it was cold and arid, this was a surprisingly productive grassland ecosystem, teeming with life. Immense glaciers flanked the land, creating natural barriers that isolated pockets of life for thousands of years. Geologists call these isolated zones refugia, islands of tundra in a sea of ice.
It was inside one of these Siberian refugia that our story begins. Life for the ancient North Siberians who lived here was a relentless struggle. They were nomadic hunter-gatherers, their entire lives revolving around finding food and avoiding becoming food. They worried about hunger, the deep cold that seeped into their bones, and predators that were bigger, stronger, and faster than they were. Their prey were the giants of the Ice Age: woolly mammoths, steppe bison, and woolly rhinos. Hunting these creatures with stone-tipped spears was an incredibly dangerous gamble. A successful kill meant food, fat for fuel, and hides for shelter. Failure meant starvation. Injury meant a slow death in the unforgiving cold. These humans lived in small, mobile family groups, following the herds. Their shelters were likely simple structures, made from mammoth bones and animal hides, with a precious fire at the center. That fire was the heart of their world, a beacon of safety in the frozen darkness. It cooked their food, hardened their spears, and kept the terrifying predators of the night at bay.
But humans weren't the only sophisticated pack hunters on this landscape. Roaming the same icy plains were the ancestors of our modern dogs, Pleistocene gray wolves. It's important to know that these weren't the same gray wolves we see today. Genetic analysis shows the specific wolf population that gave rise to dogs is now extinct. So, modern wolves are more like cousins to our dogs, not their direct ancestors. Both evolved from a shared, ancient predecessor. These Ice Age wolves were a different breed, larger and more robust, with powerful jaws built for crushing the bones of the giant beasts they hunted. Like humans, they were social creatures, relying on the pack to take down prey far larger than themselves. For thousands of years, humans and these ancient wolves were direct competitors. They hunted the same animals and stalked the same territories. A wolf pack could steal a human's kill, and a group of hunters could drive a pack from its own. They were rivals in a zero-sum game of survival. The idea that these two species would one day form the most enduring partnership in the animal kingdom would have been unthinkable. And yet, the very desperation that fueled their competition was about to become the catalyst for the most unlikely alliance in history. The first steps toward domestication weren't taken by a human extending a hand of friendship. They were likely taken by a wolf, driven by hunger. The process that kicked all this off is what scientists call the commensal pathway. So picture this, a human camp after a successful hunt. The air, thick with the smell of roasting mammoth meat, carries for miles. In the middle of it all is the flickering warmth of the fire. But around the camp lies a treasure trove of discarded resources, a refuse pile with bones, gristle, and other leftovers. To a starving wolf, this was an irresistible beacon. A potential meal without a dangerous, energy-draining hunt was a powerful lure. The first encounters were probably tense. A wolf, maybe a young outcast, or just a particularly bold one, creeps towards the edge of the firelight. Its instincts are screaming danger. Humans are a threat. Fire is a threat. But its empty stomach is a more immediate problem. From the human side, a wolf at the edge of camp would have been cause for alarm. Wolves were dangerous competitors. The natural reaction would have been to shout, throw stones, and drive the intruder away. For any wolf that was too bold or aggressive, the encounter would have ended with a spear. In this way, humans themselves became the first and most brutal filter in this new selective process. But not all wolves are the same. In any population, there's natural variation. Some are more aggressive, others less so. Imagine a wolf that, instead of challenging the humans, just waited. It kept its distance, circling just beyond the reach of a thrown rock, its posture submissive. It waited for the humans to retire for the night, and then it would slink in to snatch the scraps. This wolf gained a huge advantage. It got a meal without spending immense energy or risking injury. It survived another day. The humans, in turn, might have started to tolerate this cautious presence. A wolf that cleaned up their garbage could be accidentally useful, keeping bigger, more dangerous scavengers like cave hyenas away. This wasn't a single event, but a slow dance that played out over countless nights and generations. The wolves that were genetically a little less fearful and a little less aggressive were the ones that succeeded in this new niche. They ate, survived, and passed those genes for tolerance on to their pups. The humans were slowly changing too. Maybe a curious child tossed a bone towards the shadows. Maybe a hunter, seeing the wolf was no immediate threat, just chose to ignore it. This wasn't friendship. It was a cold, pragmatic calculation. The wolves got a relatively safe food source, and the humans got a slightly cleaner camp. The most aggressive wolves were killed. The most timid wolves starved. But a new kind of wolf was starting to emerge, the one that was just brave enough and just smart enough to live with us. The gradual tolerance between humans and wolves set the stage for one of the most fascinating processes in evolution: self-domestication. Humans weren't actively picking wolves and breeding them. Instead, the wolves started to domesticate themselves.
The driving force behind this has been called survival of the friendliest. In the brutal math of natural selection, fittest doesn't always mean strongest. Around a Paleolithic campsite, the fittest wolf was the one that could handle living near humans. The hyper-aggressive wolves were killed, the super timid wolves never got close enough to the scrap pile. The evolutionary sweet spot belonged to the wolves that showed a kind of social intelligence, a tolerance for people, and a curious, almost juvenile attitude. Over many generations, this pressure started to have huge effects. These camp wolves were now on a different evolutionary path from their wild cousins. They were being selected for their social skills, not just their hunting prowess. The best modern proof of this comes from the famous Belayev fox experiment. Starting in the 1950s, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belayev bred silver foxes based on just one trait: how tame they were towards humans. In a remarkably short time, his team saw dramatic changes. The foxes started acting like dogs, whimpering, wagging their tails, and licking their caretakers. But they also started to look different. Their coats got spotty, their ears got floppy, their tails curled, and their snouts got shorter. This is a phenomenon known as domestication syndrome. Scientists think these physical traits are genetically linked to the hormones that control stress and fear. By selecting for tameness, a behavior, they accidentally dragged along a whole suite of physical changes. This is almost certainly what happened to the first proto-dogs. As generations were selected for being less fearful, their bodies began to change. Archaeologists see this in the fossil record. When they compare ancient wolf skulls to the earliest undisputed dog remains, like those from Bonn Oberkassel in Germany, they see the signs. The snouts are shorter and wider, the teeth are smaller, and the parts of the brain tied to fight-or-flight responses begin to shrink. The wolf's predatory toolkit was being reshaped for a new life. Another key part of this is neoteny, keeping juvenile traits into adulthood. Puppies are naturally more curious and less fearful than adult wolves. The wolves that kept these puppy-like traits as adults were less threatening and more likely to be tolerated. That big-eyed, playful, attention-seeking behavior we love in our dogs is a direct evolutionary echo of this. It was the puppy-like adult wolves that made it in the human-dominated world. The wolves didn't just get tamed, they evolved a whole new strategy for survival. They gave up some freedom of the wild, and in exchange, they gained the security of the human camp and set themselves on the path to becoming the most successful canine on the planet. For the bond to become permanent, it had to become a two-way street, a true mutualistic relationship where both species got a clear benefit. This transition was the real game changer. It was the moment the camp follower became an ally, and the proto-dog began to earn its keep. So what did these evolving canines offer our ancestors? The first, and maybe most important role, was as a living alarm system. With their incredible hearing and sense of smell, they could detect an approaching predator, a cave lion or a rival human tribe, long before any person could. Their barks, once an annoyance, now served as an invaluable early warning, giving the group time to prepare a defense. For people living on a knife's edge, that security was a huge advantage. Beyond security, proto-dogs proved their worth on the hunt. Humans had tool-making smarts, but they lacked the wolf's raw speed and sensory skills.
A proto-dog could track prey over vast distances and chase it down. The human hunters could then arrive to make the kill more safely and efficiently. This turned two good predators into one superstar hunting team. The dogs got a guaranteed share of the meat, and humans boosted their success while lowering their own risk. Finally, they were a sanitation crew. By eating camp refuse, they kept the place cleaner, reducing disease and lessening the attraction for larger, more dangerous scavengers. In return, the benefits for the canines were obvious. They got a reliable supply of food, especially in the lean Ice Age winters. The human camp also offered protection. Staying close to armed, fire-wielding humans was great for guarding against larger predators or rival wolf packs. And on a freezing Siberian night, the warmth from a human campfire was a resource beyond measure. This is where the scientific evidence gets really compelling. DNA analysis points to a domestication process that likely began in Siberia sometime around 23,000 years ago. Researchers believe the intense isolation created by the last glacial maximum forced humans and a specific population of wolves into close, sustained contact, kickstarting this co-evolutionary journey. The archaeological record provides tangible proof. Some of the most profound evidence comes from graves. In Bonn-Oberkassel, Germany, archaeologists found a 14,200-year-old double burial of a man and a woman. Laid to rest with them were the remains of a dog. A recent analysis revealed an even more touching story. The dog was just a puppy that had survived a severe case of distemper. For it to have survived, it would have needed intensive nursing from its human companions, even though it was too sick to be useful. This is among the earliest and most compelling pieces of evidence we have for a true emotional bond. And maybe the most haunting clue comes from Chauvet Cave in France.
Preserved in the soft clay floor for what may be 26,000 years are the footprints of a small child walking side by side with the paw prints of a large canine. Scientists still debate the exact age and whether the canine was a tamed wolf or an early dog, but the image is powerful. It's a silent, ghostly snapshot of companionship, a shared journey into the dark. This was the moment the alliance was truly forged, not just in the hunt, but in the heart. The journey from a cooperative wolf to a domesticated dog wasn't just a change in behavior. It was a fundamental split in biology. What really changed the game was the genetic separation that carved a permanent evolutionary path for dogs. One of the biggest discoveries is that your golden retriever isn't descended from the gray wolves we see today. All modern dogs, from Great Danes to pugs, share a common ancestor, a population of ancient wolves that went extinct thousands of years ago. This means modern wolves are more like the cousins of dogs, not their direct grandparents. Both species came from the same ancient wolf lineage, but then went their separate ways. For a long time, the question of when and where was a heated debate. But a growing scientific consensus, backed by a lot of genetic evidence, now points strongly towards a single main origin event in Siberia, happening somewhere around 23,000 years ago. This lines up perfectly with the Ice Age climate, which would have created the isolated refugia needed for this unique relationship to develop. From that Siberian heartland, dogs then spread across the globe with their human partners. Genetic trails show that humans and dogs migrated together from Siberia, across the Bering Land Bridge, and into the Americas around 15,000 years ago. They were part of the group. However, the story isn't perfectly simple. While Siberia seems to be the primary origin, some genetic studies hint at the possibility of other, smaller domestication events. There's evidence for at least two distinct ancient dog populations, one in the east and one in the west, that later mixed together as human groups expanded.
This suggests a more complex, branching history. And scientists are still working to unravel these tangled genetic threads using ancient DNA. This genetic story is mirrored by the fossil record. As proto-dogs adapted to a diet of human leftovers, their bodies changed. The intense pressure to be able to hunt massive prey lessened. Fossil skulls show the results. Snouts became shorter and broader, and the powerful, bone-crushing teeth of their wolf ancestors shrank. Even their brains got a bit smaller compared to wolves of a similar size. This wasn't a sign of them becoming dumber, but rather an adaptation to a new life, where they no longer needed the full suite of sensory processing power required of a wild apex predator. They now had a human partner to help them navigate the world.
From the frozen plains of Ice Age Siberia to the warmth of our homes, the journey of the dog is one of the most incredible stories in evolution. It spans tens of thousands of years, and it all started with the desperation of two competing species, pushed together by a glacial world. It was an alliance of convenience, where the promise of a scavenged meal was worth the risk of creeping toward the human fire. Over generations, a remarkable transformation happened. Survival of the friendliest favored the curious and the tolerant, slowly sculpting a new kind of creature. The competitor became a guardian. The rival hunter became a partner. And eventually, the animal at the edge of the firelight became a companion at our side. The pact, once purely practical, deepened into a bond of genuine affection, a bond so strong that our ancestors buried their canine friends with the same care they afforded their own kin. So the next time you look at your dog, see them in this new light. See them not just as a pet, but as the living legacy of that ancient, accidental alliance. Every time they bark at a stranger, you're hearing the echo of the sentinel that guarded a Paleolithic camp from the terrors of the night. Every time they greet you with joy, you're seeing the result of thousands of years of evolution, selecting for an animal that could thrive in human society. The creature curled up on your floor is a direct descendant of those first canines that chose cooperation over conflict. They carry within them a story of survival and companionship that has fundamentally shaped both of our species. The bond we share is not a modern invention, it's an ancient inheritance, a silent promise made in a world of ice that has been kept for millennia. If you enjoyed this journey back in time and want to explore more stories from our deep past, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with any fellow dog lovers you know. Thank you for watching.
Hi everybody, it's Paul. You know, a lot of people ask me, after a long day of voiceover or writing or doing all those creative things that I do, how do I relax? Well, like many other Americans, I come home and I pet my dog. You see,